I have the pleasure of welcoming you this afternoon to today's Memorial Day Observance. We're so glad you all could be here. I see a lot of familiar faces and a lot of new faces and young faces, and we're so glad that everybody took the time to join us here. I'm here today representing the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom Triangle Branch. This year's sponsors also include the Eisenhower Chapter 157 of Veterans for Peace and Voices for Justice in Palestine. Local peace and justice organizations present this program each year as an alternative to the glorification of war that all too often has eclipsed what Memorial Day is really all about. A time to reflect on the true costs of war and the toll it takes on those deployed to fight unnecessary battles for conquest, those caught in the bombing, the mayhem, and the displacement, those who survive with unseen wounds, those who wait at home, those who resist, and those who work for peace. This year, as we live under an administration that is embracing authoritarianism, slashing programs that service veterans, and is hostile to those who work for peace, it is more important than ever that we come together in community, in remembrance, and to say, as we must, never again for anyone. Hosting our program this afternoon will be the Reverend J. Mark Davidson. Reverend Davidson currently serves as the Executive Director of Voices for Justice in Palestine. Mark has worked on peace and justice issues for more than 50 years. From 2011 to 2018, he chaired the National Peace Discernment Process of the Presbyterian Church and co-authored its anti-war policy, which centered the nonviolent love of Jesus. Mark retired from pastoral ministry in 2019 and began working with Voices for Justice in Palestine towards a free Palestine. Mark?
Good afternoon. Thank you all for coming. It's great to have all of us together, just as Lucy said, at this critical time in the life of our country and the world. I'd like to make just a few introductory remarks to set the tone for what promises to be an amazing afternoon. We gather on this Memorial Day to remember all the victims of war. By all the victims of war, we mean the combatants and the innocent civilian victims. We mean the lives of our compatriots, the lives of nations in alliance with us, the lives of those we labeled at the time as enemy nations. We mean those lost on the battlefield and those lost in the battle that continues long after the guns fall silent. We remember also the lives of our relatives in the animal kingdom and the ecological destruction of habitats, soils, rivers, lakes, and streams. We gather to enact our solemn responsibility to remember all those losses and to rededicate ourselves to abolishing war. And I might add, not only to stop war itself, but as George Fox urged several centuries ago, to live in the virtue of that life and power that takes away the occasion of all wars. Which is to say that if we are serious about abolishing war, we must go to the roots of war, to the lusts and fears and lies that lurk in the human heart and harden as ideologies in society. When I think of contemporary examples, courageous examples, who are striving to live in virtue of that life and power that seeks to take away the occasion of all wars, I think of many of you in this room, and I am endlessly grateful for each of you. I also think of the intrepid Israeli reporter Amira Haas, one of the few remaining members of the Israeli left. She was recently in New York to receive an award for her journalism. She was asked what she saw as the purpose of her work. She said, "I have refused to accept the normalization of injustice." Let me say that again. I have refused to accept the normalization of injustice. Her words stayed with me. I offer them today as a call to action for all of us. As we know, for over 575 days, the vast military and political power of Israel, fully backed by a constant supply of bombs and political cover from the United States and other Western powers, has carried out a brutal campaign of collective punishment to make Gaza unlivable and to break the spirit of the Palestinian people through starvation, disease, and genocidal violence. Amira Haas's statement reminds us that the most dangerous thing about injustice is its normalization. The powers and principalities want to make injustice a common occurrence, something that doesn't even require justification, just what they do because they have the power and it's what they want to do. They want us to get used to it, to muffle our screams, to succumb to codes of silence, to go along with genocide. They want us to believe that nothing can be done to stop it, that resistance is futile, but when the people raise their voices and refuse to submit to the madness, when students fast for Gaza, when thousands fill the streets, when we organize and mobilize, we are doing three beautiful and extraordinarily important things. We are cleaving to the truth and rejecting the propaganda the powers and principalities use to try to deceive and disempower us. We are announcing the world we intend to live in, a world of wisdom and compassion, freedom, peace, and justice for all. And third, we are defending and upholding each other in our particular work to make that world a reality. So today, by our songs and our declarations, our speakers' presentations, our poems and resolutions, and the sounds of the trumpet, we are reclaiming our power. We are showing our faith in the truth, our passion for the world we intend, and our shared commitment to nourish each other in this sacred work of counting the costs of war and working for peace. Thank you so much for being here today. Music has a way of uniting us as one as we come together in this shared space. As we do every year, the Triangle Raging Grannies bring an original message in song as to our Memorial Day observance. They write all of their own lyrics, not, as they say, to entertain, but to bring their messages of truth wherever they need to be heard. And they have, I think, 2 songs for us today.
The Triangle, North Carolina Raging Grannies have had the fortune to sing and rage for all of these annual alternative Memorial Day observances. This has been going on over a decade, and we are remembering around the globe every person that have lost their lives. Those that are in the military, and the innocents, women and children and elderly, and also remembering the destruction of our Mother Earth caused by warfare. We will not, as Raging Grannies, ever become immune or isolate ourselves from the insanity of warfare. So we are here, as most of you already know, that we are just one of many gaggles across the United States and in Canada who had their beginnings in the late 1980s, who do write their own lyrics to familiar tunes. So we will be singing a couple familiar tunes. So here we stand, but not all of us, bringing you our message in 2 songs of ending all wars, so children living around the world no longer live in fear and traumatized by the insanity of warfare. Since our oldest granny, Ruth Zalf, 95, there she sits, but she was unable to be with us today due to a fall. But she was brought here today by one of the other grannies who actually customized her dress, and our mannequin is sitting there in proper attire for this event. Sadly, Vicki Ryder, who has been instrumental in helping plan these Memorial Day observances with other sponsoring organizations and coordinating us as grannies, we miss her, had a serious fall just a few days ago and was unable to be with us today. The 2 songs, To Save the Earth and What Have We Won, with these lyrics adapted for Memorial Day 2025, were written by Vicki. And we're holding you, Vicki, in the light as you heal. So here we go, grannies, singing our songs to end all wars.
Well, the climate is a-changing and the earth is getting hot. We've got drought and wildfires and even more. We've got climate refugees and the rising of the seas. But the worst threat of all is we've got war. The military's planted landmines where the flowers used to grow. They sprayed napalm, Agent Orange, poison gases. And their greatest contributions to the Earth's toxic pollution is the radioactive fallout from their wars. Well, they say it's up to us to change our light bulbs, don't eat meat, and not buy toilet paper anymore. But we're not the ones to blame for their greed or lack of shame, or all the death and destruction from their wars. They spend trillions on the weapons that destroy our Mother Earth, while war profiteers just keep on making more. They keep using fossil fuels and they take us all for fools. But we know that our worst threat comes from war. And the ones who know it best are the ones who've been to war. So we're rising with one voice to say no more. For it's plain for all to see that there is no planet B. To save the earth, we have got to end all war. We're making nuclear bombs again, fighter jets and drones. Our taxes spent on war machines, killing children in their homes. Toddlers and babies, school-age children too. lie beneath the rubble where the olive trees once grew. One moment they were playing, the next one they were dead, while those who live forevermore will live in fear and dread. Their futures torn and shattered, while memories remain of how we came and left behind starvation, grief, and pain. It's to our shame and sorrow that we're the only ones who've ever dropped an atom bomb. And just what have we won? They tell us God is on our side and that our way is right. When will we learn the simple truth that might does not make right? It's time to put the bombs to rest, just make them disappear, so children living round the world no longer live in fear. The threat of insane warfare must be gone forevermore, so all the world can live in peace. Let's put an end to war.
Yay, Grannies. Thank you. That was wonderful. Friends, in past years, we've invited the elected officials of Orange and Chatham County's towns and villages to read their Memorial Day proclamations. This year, we've taken the bold step of writing our own declaration, which sets forth our own purpose and intentions. But before we read our joint declaration, we'd like to recognize the elected officials who are with us today. And I know Paris Miller-Fouché from the Chapel Hill Town Council is here, and also Randy Haven O'Donnell from the Carrboro City Council. I'd invite you to stand and briefly introduce yourselves. Paris. And to say that they brought their own declarations, which are at the front table there, and we'd invite you to take the time to read those from the Chapel Hill and Carrboro City Councils. Are there any other elected officials here that I haven't recognized yet to call on you to also briefly say hello? Paris, please, a personal word of welcome? No?
Well, I just want to thank the organizers for today. I brought my son with me. This was really important for me to come. And I had no idea that community members reframed what Memorial Day has meant to be. I grew up just understanding it, not for victims of war, but just as a military exercise, an extension of that narrative. And so this is really moving for me to bring Memorial Day back to what it needs to be. And I want to thank all of you for your commitment to peace. We need it now more than ever. On a local level, it's difficult right now. Local municipalities really feel abandoned by our federal government, as well as our state governments, as we are trying to continue to serve our community. And believe it or not, your local government, in many ways, are on the front lines of really being able to carry out our values, peace, justice, and equity within our communities. So bring a young person with you always to events like this. Continue to have the conversations and get them involved locally. because local politics, now more than ever, is important. So thank you all for having us here. Thank you again to the organizers for the work that you all are doing. And I'm just really honored to be here. Thank you so much.
So report if you'd like.
Sure. I want to thank the organizers who have forged a partnership to bring Memorial Day to a whole other level. We are living in a nightmare, and it's a nightmare of hate, polarization, otherism, and we don't even know in what ways our silence and our complicity fuel it further. And Memorial Day has always been important to me. When I was in high school, we lost several members of our high school who were drafted for an undeclared, congressionally undeclared Vietnam War. My father fought with his generation against fascists in Europe, and they fought in the Pacific. We are all victims. I especially appreciate the Raging Grannies for uplifting the climate and the environmental degradation that happens as a result of war. I have friends who were exposed to Agent Orange in Vietnam who have suffered their entire life. What's happening to veterans now in this country, what's happening to all of us, is a call to action. And so I am here today with you all because I stand for action that represents peace foremost, justice for all, and looking at the potential of eliminating war. As said, war, what is it good for? Absolutely nothing.
Reading our joint declaration for this Memorial Day will be Mary Jenne, co-chair of the Triangle Branch of the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom, and member of this Memorial Day Planning Committee. Mary, Jen? Oh, there you go.
This is a joint declaration of peace on Memorial Day, May 26, 2025. Whereas Memorial Day was originally proclaimed on May 30th, 1868 as Decoration Day, a solemn day for strewing the graves of Civil War soldiers, both Union and Confederate, with flowers. And whereas in the wake of two devastating world wars, Congress passed a joint resolution on May 11th, 1950, calling for Memorial Day to be dedicated to prayer for permanent peace. Okay. Whereas, in recent years, the Memorial Day holiday has come instead to normalize American militarism with flag-waving parades and flyovers, and to offer the American public a day off from work. And whereas we wish to return Memorial Day to its intended meaning as a day to commemorate all victims of war, not just those who died in U.S. military uniforms, but all victims of war, the young, the old, military and civilian, our fellow human beings of all nations, the four-legged, those with feathers, fur, and scales, the farms and forests laid bare, the cities and cultures destroyed, the oceans and rivers, and Mother Earth herself. And whereas the true cost of war must be measured not only in lives lost and potentials unfulfilled, but in the massive expenditure of national treasure on weapons of death and destruction, as well as the enduring responsibility of providing crucial care and support for victims wounded in body, mind, and spirit. And whereas trillions in war expenditures and war debt constitute a tragic misallocation of resources
and a failure to address vast, unmet human needs in our society. And whereas the desire for conquest and victory too often overtakes truth, long known as the first casualty of war, and impairs our ability to weigh the policies and pretexts that lead to and maintain war. And whereas war is not inevitable, and the war machine is a human construct and therefore lies within our capacity to dismantle, now therefore, we rededicate ourselves to working for an end to war so that no one will ever again have to witness the horrific suffering war causes or have to mourn those who perish in military adventures and serve only empires and war profiteers, and so that we might instead labor together to create the conditions, both physical and spiritual, of a durable peace, wholeness, and human flourishing. In witness thereof, we so proclaim the Eisenhower Chapter 157, Veterans for Peace, Voices for Justice in Palestine, and the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom, the Triangle Branch.
Thank you, Mary Jenne. Next up, we have an opportunity to hear Dr. Mark Perlmutter. Dr. Mark Perlmutter is past president of the International College of Surgeons and current president of the World Surgical Foundation. He has an active orthopedic surgical practice in Rocky Mount, so he is local. In the spring of 2024 and again in the spring of 2025, Dr. Perlmutter volunteered in a medical mission to Gaza to try to save the lives of the innocent victims of the American-Israeli genocide on Gaza. Dr. Perlmutter described physical trauma unlike anything he had ever experienced over the course of his medical career and dozens of medical missions to natural disasters and war zones, and was quoted as saying that he was troubled that U.S. funding with our tax dollars has made us all complicit in the carnage. The war victims he saw but was unable to be saved due to Israel's blockade of humanitarian aid have rocked him to his core. Dr. Perlmutter is on call today and unable to be with us in person, but he has graciously gifted us with a video message especially recorded for us and for this occasion today. With the assistance of Voices for Veterans for Peace, and also JVP, member Jerry Marketos, who heads Balance and Accuracy in Journalism, we are honored to bring you Dr. Perlmutter and his message today. Thank you. Please welcome him.
Good afternoon, all. I'm honored that you asked me to speak to you today, and I'm sorry for the impersonal nature of a recording. Nothing ruins authenticity in trying to deliver a message than doing so by video, and I apologize for that. But I had a newborn granddaughter when I was in Gaza, and I had not seen her yet, so I'm hugging her this weekend, and thank you for letting me to participate by video. I'd like to share with you my thoughts that have been molded by my 2 trips to Gaza and by my interactions with American politicians and legacy media folks since I've returned from both. My opinions have been well massaged because of those experiences, and I'd like to share them with you. But first, some historical perspective. Throughout my youth, my father shared with me experiences as a Jewish doctor at the end of World War II, caring for imprisoned Jews in Nazi concentration camps that he was assigned to help care for. He shared with me his incredibly disturbing photographs taken within the camps, depicting just how horrible humans could be and what happens when good people make bad decisions and fall on the wrong side of history, destroying whole populations of innocents. He showed me shoeboxes filled with horrid photographs of construction equipment dumping hundreds of emaciated bodies into deep ditches that were so long they blurred into the distance, resembling 6-foot deep furrows in newly plowed farmers' fields, burying thousands of starved, clearly starved, men, women, and children into unmarked mass graves. The only purpose of this was to wipe their heritage and their memory from the face of the earth forever. I thought I would never personally see such carnage in my life, believing that organized collections of nations that I saw developing during my youth, the growth of democracies, and the maturation of world courts would prevent the future destruction of a people just because they were easily exploited. So, what has been happening in the last 8 decades in Palestine, a land where Jews and Arabs once counted themselves as loving neighbors, to cause such incredible animosity that we witness today? The answer is Zionism, not a religious movement at all, just a political movement, no different than the Democratic Party and the Republican parties are political movements. In this case, though, both Jews and Muslims alike fell victim to the millions of lies which are the foundation of the Zionist political agenda, trying to make the world believe that Palestine is filled only with Muslim terrorists whose only goal in life is to kill every otherwise innocent Jew. Believing these lies, Western governments not only have permitted the indiscriminate mass murder of innocent civilians, but we have been 100% complicit in enabling them to do so by providing billions of dollars of direct military support to first incarcerate Palestinians for greater than 50 years into an open air prison we call the Gaza Strip, and then now, at this moment, systematically cleansing that prison of the trapped Palestinians using the equivalent of 3 atomic bombs worth of TNT and deliberate starvation as weapons. I have worked at all 3 of the last remaining hospitals in Gaza over the last 2 years, and the blood that covered my shoes in both their operating rooms and their emergency departments is now on the hands of every single American legislature, legacy media journalist who refused to stand up and broadcast the truth, and every single American taxpayer who does not stand up against the mass pediatric homicide that is taking place in the Middle East with our blessing. Our silence is the largest bullet in the gun of complicity. Not only does the United States supply the weaponry, but we then actively block every single attempt of every other nation to enforce international laws protecting the Palestinians. You know, I was there on March 18th when the internationally brokered ceasefire was violated by Israel, as they have done so for every ceasefire. 20 minutes after the ceasefire, I had seen dozens of starving, emaciated toddlers and babies covering every available inch of the emergency room floors, overflowing into the hallways, some of who reached up, grabbing my pant leg from their position on the floor with the only remaining limb that they had, pulling on me for my help with their shredded body. But I had to step over many of them, watching them uh, watching them rapidly bleed to death so that I could get to a child that had some chance of survival. I took bullets and shrapnel out of 5-year-olds the size of my thumb. I've amputated extremities without any anesthesia because there wasn't any in children. And I fixed fractures in toddlers with only drill bits because all of the typical orthopedic hardware had been used up. That was just the first night. When the sun came up, I'm sorry. I smelled the hard symphony of putrid sulfur, an olfactory offensive blending of months of overflowing raw sewage, decaying corpses, necrotic wounds, and gunpowder. That same week, I treated United Nations relief volunteers with their legs literally blown off, deliberately attacked by IDF soldiers while in their safe houses, which hold the same diplomatic protection as international embassies, yet they're attacked deliberately by Israel. I had taken the testimony of dozens of Palestinian surgeons and nurses who were kidnapped out of the operating rooms by IDF soldiers, taken to Israeli prisons, and tortured for months, up to 11 months. And I have walked into the bottom of excavated mass graves on the hospital grounds where local inhabitants have testified to me and to lawyers, witnessing children being pushed into these mass graves months earlier by a bulldozer, and then having their screams disappear under the falling bucket of dirt as they were buried alive. I have witnessed the intentional use of famine as a weapon of war, with both of my patients looking exactly like the emaciated Jews in my father's shoebox full of sepia photographs. I've seen two assassinated 6 and 8-year-old boys. Each were shot both in the head and the chest. And the assassin's perfectly placed second bullet cannot be claimed to be accidental. Indeed, the father of one of the children looked up to the source of the second gunshot while he was kneeling over his son's eviscerated chest and saw the Israeli soldier gesture to him the cultural equivalent of the middle finger. 2 months ago, I was in a hospital that was deliberately bombed by the IDF, almost killing one of my best friends. This was a complete violation of the Geneva Convention, to which Israel became a signature to in 1950. That portion of the Geneva Convention was written during our Civil War and has been honored ever since by every country except Israel. The Israeli government is nothing more than a collection of monsters that repeatedly violate the ethical foundations of all democracies with the necessary and mandatory permission of the United States and other Western governments, but mostly ours. Even prominent Jewish politicians now agree. Just this week, General Yair Golan, the former deputy chief of the Israeli military, said, quote, "A sane country does not attack civilians. It does not kill babies as a hobby, and it does not expel civilian populations." So if he, as a prominent Israeli, once military powerhouse, a hero of October 7th, if he has the guts to stand up to Netanyahu, then why cannot our legislatures do the same? The answer is simple. It's because of the hundreds of millions of dollars gifted to them to ensure both their loyalty and their re-election. The gift comes from the Israeli lobbies. These unregulated donations eviscerate our senators, as my patients were eviscerated, and congressmen, of their conscience, and completely bleed them of their ethics. There's been some killings in D.C. based on anti-Semitism last week. Let's talk a little bit about that anti-Semitism and why it's on the increase in all Western democracies. The cause of this increased anti-Semitism is Israel itself, their right-wing government. They quickly label all decent people who oppose their ultra-right-wing government murderous agenda and actions as anti-Semitic. An instant label. You oppose me, you're anti-Semitic. This manipulative propaganda is forcing the world not to oppose them as a government, but rather blame all innocent Jews as being responsible for the atrocities that are happening in Palestine. Their governmental actions directly fertilize anti-Semitism throughout the world. We should support Israel and the United States at all times as countries, but their governments only deserve our support when they act ethically and righteously. Now, even the most respectable Jewish Holocaust historians, including Professor Amos Goldberg, claim, quote, this Israeli government is committing a genocide, close quote, a term forbidden in our academic institutions and out in public, is now being spoken by recognized Holocaust experts. He now stands in full agreement with every single respectable human rights organization in the world, having long declared this a genocide. The tens of thousands of lies that Israel has advanced to cover this up, the millions of lies that they told over the last 7 decades under the pretense of securing their own safety, was only to cover up a simple Zionistic land grab. It is not a Muslim versus Jew war that's taking place. It's simply, I want your land and I'm willing to kill your children to get it. The forceful procurement of land that was never theirs alone. Let's look at that for a second, because that's the premise of what's blocking a single or a two-state solution. Israel's claim that they have a long-standing historical tie to the land is not justified by any international law. In the League of Nations covenant called the Palestinian Mandate, that was part of the 1919 Treaty of Versailles, Palestine was to be provisionally recognized as an independent state, a single state for all of the people of the land, everyone, not just a state for any particular religious or racial group, including Jews or Muslims. So the idea that there is a legal foundation for a single Jewish state in Palestine was never based on international law, and it now exists only because of Zionistic political pressures and billions of dollars of American taxpayer support. But why? Again, for almost 8 decades, they convinced our lawmakers that if we do not do so, we will be labeled as Jew haters. A label nobody wants, particularly since the Holocaust, which they use quite effectively as a tool to remind us of how horribly they've been treated in the past. They have been extraordinarily effective in their messaging. After each of my 2 trips to Gaza, I had gone to Washington, D.C. to share the truth to American legislatures as a Jewish heritage American surgeon, probably the only one who was there in Gaza, to share with them the truth of what I saw. I was met with closed doors by 100% of senators and congressmen, many of who accused me directly of being anti-Semitic for trying to do so in spite of my Jewish heritage. On this Memorial Day, I deeply respect those who willingly sacrifice their own lives to fight for global injustice, fight against global injustice. Now I wonder just how those over 600,000 American souls that we honor today must be crying in heaven to watch the same government that they so proudly served directly cause the same murderous hatred that they themselves died to prevent. Thank you for the honor to speak to you today. Keep fighting for the justice that the weakest of us deserve. Long live Palestine.
Next up, we have the pleasure of listening to Bella Nona. Bella Nona is a composer and multi-instrumentalist based in North Carolina. She performs her original music with her band and string trio Act of Love and composes for the contemporary circus company Circus Evo. Her music can be heard on all streaming platforms. Please join me in welcoming Bella Nona.
I think I'll be all right without a chair. I'll just do this. Might be leaning over a bit. Hi everybody. Wow, okay. I'm like, it's really hard to play after what we just all received. Let me tune first. How about that? Hi, Jackie. I love you. This is a song I wrote for Gaza.
Thank you, Bella. Medea Benjamin almost needs no introduction. She is the co-founder of the women-led peace group Code Pink and co-founder of the human rights group Global Exchange. She has been an advocate for social justice for more than 50 years, described as one of America's most committed and most effective fighters for human rights by New York Newsday, and one of the high-profile leaders of the peace movement by the Los Angeles Times. She was one of 1,000 exemplary women from 140 countries nominated to receive the Nobel Peace Prize on behalf of the millions of women who do the essential work of peace worldwide. Medea will be appearing today in a live stream conversation with us and will be available to respond to your questions after she completes her keynote remarks. Welcome, Medea, and please join me in welcoming her.
I'll take that as a yes. So nice to be with you. I have to chuckle at the introduction of saying how effective I am on fighting for human rights when you see the state of the world today. And I think we all join together in a sense of despair and anguish and feeling the tremendous inadequacy of our own efforts and the efforts of the global community. Listening to Dr. Perlmutter is just heartbreaking, and yet very fitting on Memorial Day to not only recognize those who have died in wars, but also those who are the peacemakers. And thank you to Wilf and Veterans for Peace for always putting that front and center, especially with all the holidays that we have devoted to war in one shape or another. And we have the June 14th celebration of the military and Donald Trump's birthday coming up here in Washington, D.C., where they're going to have to put metal plates on the roads in D.C. so that the tanks won't destroy our streets. But this orgy of celebration of militarism just goes on and on and on. So in addition to honoring the U.S. and international community that has gone to Gaza during these very dangerous times, let's also take a moment to honor the press in Gaza, risking their lives every day to try to bring us the truth, because Israel will not let international press into into Gaza. And also to the health workers in Gaza, so many of whom have died. And take a moment also to send our feelings of love and sympathy to the Gaza pediatrician, Dr. Ala Al-Najjar, who just 3 days ago, while she was working in the hospital to save the lives of other people's children, found out that 9 of her 10 children had been blown up when Israel deliberately targeted her home, found 7 of her children dead under the rubble, 2 of them missing, and her one surviving child and her husband in critical condition. So let's send her our prayers, our love, and our tremendous sympathy for somebody who has dedicated her life to saving the lives of children. I have spent the last 19 months in Congress almost every single day. And I have less and less and less respect for our institutions, for our quote democracy. It makes a mockery of the word democracy to think that we have been so complicit, and as Dr. Perlmutter said, our hands dripping in blood, continuously sending weapons and more money to Israel have the nerve to call ourselves a democracy. We have two war parties, and I think most of you, if not all of you, in the room today understand the two war parties. And while the Democrats are certainly better on a lot of domestic issues, trying to save Medicaid, trying to save Social Security, trying to save the SNAP program that provides food to people who need the assistance, they're not better when it comes to war.
That's right.
In fact, we certainly don't like most of what Donald Trump stands for, but at least in the issue of Ukraine, he is trying to end that war, and yet the Democrats want to keep sending more weapons to keep that war going. And when the president is negotiating to try to come to a nuclear agreement with Iran, we should first of all understand that he is the one that pulled us out of the agreement that was signed under President Obama, the signature achievement in foreign policy of his administration. But that Trump now doesn't seem to want to go to war with Iran. And yet, where are the Democrats standing up to say, yes, we support negotiations? I don't hear them. And yet what we do hear is Republicans to the right of Donald Trump, who want to bomb Iran, who want to support Israel's efforts for decades now to drag the U.S. into a war with Iran. And so these two war parties continue to string us out in this military-industrial complex that General Eisenhower warned us about so many years ago in the 1960s. And this is something that I see every day in Congress. You know, you walk into some of these congressional offices and ask to speak to somebody who works on foreign policy, and who comes out, especially in the most important offices where the members are part of the committees for armed services or foreign policy or appropriations, who comes out? A defense fellow. Who are these people? They are people who are in the different branches of the military, and they are spending a year in Congress on our dime, the taxpayer, to be influencing that member of Congress. Just think about the kind of mentality these fellows come with. One, that the military is the solution to our problems. Two, these people want to have a career afterwards, probably in one of the weapons companies, so helping to get contracts to those companies. And of course, these are the very industries that are contributing to the campaigns of our members of Congress. It's such an incredible level of corruption. And then let's look at the issue of DOGE. DOGE that wants to cut down on waste and fraud and abuse in government. And yet they pick on tiny things. I don't know if you remember when they first started, they talked about a $50 million contract to provide condoms to Gaza. And they laughed about it and said, how is this so ridiculous it is? We want to provide condoms to Gaza. Well, first of all, Gaza was a province of Mozambique. And second of all, $50 million is nothing compared to what is now a $1 trillion military budget. So we in Code Pink, together with many other groups, some of you represented in the room, have come up with our cuts that DOGE should be focused on. And we say, here's an easy $100 billion that you could save for the American taxpayer and make us safer. And it's everything from halting the F-35 program, trillions of dollars will be spent on the F-35, which is a total dud. Reassessing our long-range missile defense, cutting the Sentinel ICBM program, cutting many of the military bases that we have overseas, reducing redundant contracts, and of course, prioritizing diplomacy, which would not only save us lots of money, but would save lives all around the world. But unfortunately, it's been very difficult to convince the Republicans and Democrats that are on the committees that deal with DOGE that that's the pot of money they should be looking to cut, not Medicaid, not programs that we, the American people, need. The other thing we are up against is, of course, the pro-Israel lobby groups. And many people know AIPAC, but there are many, many other Jewish pro-Israel lobby groups that we see in the halls of Congress on a regular basis. These people are organized. Yes, they have a lot of money and they throw that money around to take out members of Congress who have stood up for Palestine, like they took out two wonderful members of Congress, Cori Bush and Jamal Bowman, and put the fear of God into the other members of Congress that if they lift up their heads to speak out against genocide, they are risking their seat in Congress. But we also have to recognize it's not just money, it's organizations. You might have heard of the interview that Tucker Carlson did with Republican Tom Massey. And if you haven't heard it, you might want to look it up, because he pulls no punches and talks about the tremendous influence of AIPAC. In fact, he says that every Republican member of Congress, and I would say just about every Democrat as well, has what he called an AIPAC babysitter. And he uses that term because he says they're watching over them, and that the members of Congress have to consult with their AIPAC member on every bill in somehow, some shape or form related to anti-Semitism or Israel. Because AIPAC has so organized in every single congressional district that there are local people who know their members of Congress and know the staff people and are constantly calling them, constantly visiting them. We are out organized, and we have to recognize that and do something about it. The other force that we're up against is the evangelical Christians. And this is a group I think we underestimate. They are much larger than the Jewish groups. They have many, many millions of people. In fact, just one of them, Christians United for Israel, boasts having 10 million members, and I don't doubt it. And they are only one group. Last week when we were in Congress, there were a number of people from a group called Christian Leaders for Israel, and they are constantly lobbying their members of Congress as well. Now, in the end, they are no friends of the Jewish people. They want Jews to, quote, return to Israel so that the second coming will be accelerated, and then the Jews who don't take Jesus Christ as their Savior will not survive. They want to speed up Armageddon. But they have a lot of power in Congress. What really does give me some hope is, despite all those lobby groups, and despite the media, the mainstream media that has been so bad, until recently, because I must say there has been some good reporting in recent months, but despite that, public opinion has changed tremendously. So much so that you look at the recent Gallup poll that says that the support of Israel is at the lowest it has ever been since they started reporting 25 years ago. And the same for a Pew poll. And what is so interesting about that Pew poll is that it showed the majority of Republicans are not supportive of Israel anymore, and this is especially true when you break it down by age groups. And that is so important to understand that this is now a huge generational divide. And while there are many of us who are in the older generations, and I see a number of you in the audience, it is the younger people today in our country and around the world who do not support the state of Israel, do not support Zionism, and have tremendous sympathy for the Palestinian people. And that is something that bodes well for the future if indeed we can hold on long enough so that there is a future for the Palestinian people. The other, you might have seen us in the halls of Congress, what we call bird dogging, going after some of these members and asking them, how long are you going to support genocide? Do you know that people are starving now in Gaza? Won't you do something to help these people? Won't you do something to stop sending weapons that are killing so many children? And I don't know if you've seen some of the answers, but you might want to check out our social media, either on Twitter or TikTok or in Instagram, because it's important to see how horrific some of these people are who are, quote, respected members of Congress. We take somebody like Lindsey Graham, who has been in Congress for decades, and he has the most horrible things to say about the Palestinian people, who he says are the most radicalized people on the planet. They've been taught from birth to hate the Jews, kill them all, and drive them into the sea. He says, do you know how they teach math in Gaza? If you had 10 Jews and you killed 6, how many would be left? That's in their school system, which is, of course, a complete lie. And then he says, we are in a religious war here, and I am with Israel. Whatever the hell you have to do to defend yourselves, level the place. Let's remember, the United States dropped 2 atomic bombs on cities in Japan to end World War II. So Israel, do whatever you have to do to survive as a Jewish state, whatever you have to do. These are, quote, real, well-respected members of Congress. And unfortunately, I have lots of quotes similar to that. What has been changing a little bit is all the efforts that so many of us have been putting in to try to embarrass and shame those members of Congress, especially now that the people in Gaza are literally starving. So there was a resolution put forward by Senator Peter Welch from Vermont, who said that we have to get humanitarian aid into Gaza. And lo and behold, so many of the Democrats that have been so supportive of Israel, from Tammy Duckworth in Illinois to Cory Booker in New Jersey, they all, except for one Democrat, Senator Fetterman from Pennsylvania, every one of them signed on to that letter. But the Republicans would not even let that go for a vote. You had Senator Reich, who is the head of the Foreign Relations Committee in the Senate, who stopped the vote, refused to let it happen. And you know on what grounds? He said, the suffering in Gaza is not Israel's fault. It's not the fault of the United States. And if we send trucks of food in there, who eats? Hamas soldiers eat. Hamas will starve the women. They starve the children. So it doesn't matter if the trucks roll in there tomorrow, the food would be stolen and distributed to fighting soldiers, and the suffering of the women and children would continue. Of course, this is a total lie. And even John McCain's wife, Cindy McCain, who runs the World Food Program, has said that it is not Hamas who is looting the trucks. It is desperate people in Gaza who are starving. And in addition to the need to open up the humanitarian aid, we of course have to stop the bombs. And it is so sad that we can't get even a majority of people in Congress to support a halt to the weapons. When Senator Bernie Sanders put forward a resolution to stop $8 billion in more bombs, he did it first in November. Only 19 senators signed on. He did it again in April, and even fewer senators signed on, only 15, which once again shows the power of the lobby groups. But what we do see changing is not only opinion in the United States, but world opinion. We see the global South, the tremendous support there is for the Palestinian people. We see the governments of South Africa who put themselves forward to the chagrin of Donald Trump to introduce into the International Court of Justice the call for Israel to be condemned for genocide. We see Latin America, countries like Colombia, severing all ties with Israel. We see countries in Asia, like Malaysia, who have done so much to try to help the people of Gaza. The Arab world is such a shameful state right now. The fact that Donald Trump could have gone to Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Qatar, and not have those countries say, number one, before we talk to you about billions of dollars of investment in the United States, you must cut off weapons to Israel. They did not say that. They have not stood up and demanded an end to Israel's genocide. But we do see people all over the world, wherever they can, because there is such repression, especially in the Arab world, for people to get out on the streets, and a lot of repression in countries like Germany, and of course here in the United States as well. Despite that, we see massive protests all around the world. I think we want to take a moment to thank the students in the United States who have done so much and taken so much risk during this commencement time to show their disgust for the U.S. policy towards Gaza. We also want to thank the groups like Veterans for Peace and WILF and Code Pink, who are now standing in front of the United Nations on a fast, starving themselves in solidarity with the people of Gaza. We want to thank the people who continue to push for boycott, divestment, and sanctions, despite the efforts in states throughout this country to make it illegal to do that. We want to thank the people who have created new groups like Doctors Against Genocide, like Veterans Against Genocide, all of the Muslim groups, the Jewish groups, the Christians groups, so many who have sprung up in the last 19 months to stand up for morality. And I want to end just by saying what happened to me 2 days ago on Saturday, when we had a protest at the Holocaust Museum here in Washington, D.C. And many people have said, you can't go to the Holocaust Museum and protest. It's just totally inappropriate. And especially after 2 people were gunned down in Washington, D.C. that worked for the Israeli embassy. But we went anyway. And it was a group of about 15, 20 people, but a lot of us were Jewish. And in fact, 2 of them were Holocaust survivors in their late 80s, early 90s. And they said how important it was to be Jews and stand outside the Holocaust Museum. And there is a huge sign outside the museum. And it says, think about what you saw inside the museum. It says, think about what you saw the next time you see injustice. It says, think about what you saw the next time you hear about genocide. And so I think we take that to heart. We will not stop thinking about the people of Gaza, thinking about the people of the West Bank, thinking about the people of Palestine, and much more than that. We will not stop acting to change our government's policies, to support the people of Palestine, and to continue to join them in the call to say, we refuse to stop until Palestine is free. Free, free Palestine. Much love to you all, and thank you for all the work you have been doing, not only for these past 19 months, but many of you for many, many decades. Thank you.
Thank you, Medea. Our plan was to have time for questions. We are past our time now. I think we could have one question. If there is anybody that would like to see one hand in the back. Erica, please come forward and speak up so Medea can hear you. Maybe come up here just so she can hear you. Speak so she can hear you.
Okay, so I wanted to see her, but so for 20 years I've been saying what you said at the beginning, that.
Can you hear her, Medea?
It's a little muffled.
Okay, I mumble. For 20 years I've been saying what you said at the beginning of your talk, that the Israel lobby and the Christian lobby is at legislature every single day, and we should be there also. So, I mean, performative actions are good for us at least, but I'm not sure that they speak to people, and I was hoping that you could speak on how we can be there re-educating everybody that has been wrongly educated by CUFI and AIPAC and all the other groups.
Medea, did you hear that? She's wanting to know how we can work to re-educate those that have been brainwashed by CUFI, AIPAC, so a re-education focus.
Yeah, the change is agonizingly slow, but it is happening. You know, AIPAC used to have big conferences in DC, but they would get like 10,000 people, and members of Congress would be falling over themselves to try to get their names up there in a special slot. Now they have their conferences behind closed doors. They don't advertise them. Members of Congress barely want to even be seen there. That's an indication of real change. And I think we are about to see change among Republicans. And I know you have a lot of Republicans in your state. We at Cook Pink are going to be dedicating the next weeks in Congress to just going to the Republican offices, because we are gathering quotes from Republican influencers, people like Tucker Carlson, people like Cindy McCain, to say that they cannot sit through this and watch people being starved and bombed every day. I think we have Marjorie Taylor Greene, who we might not agree with on 90% of the things. She does not support this war. We have Tom Massey, a Republican, does not support this war. So we have to be calling their offices every single day. Really, it can take 5 minutes out of your day. Call your 2 senators and your member of Congress. And I think within the next couple of weeks, we will start seeing some Republicans speaking out, at least in support of getting much more food into Gaza.
Again, Medea, thank you so much for all the ways that you inspire us, you and your brave folks from Code Pink. They mean so much to us. Thank you. Friends, I ask your patience for maybe a few more minutes. There are some folks who would like to share just a bit more. Let me ask Leadham Lefferts to come forward. I'll shorten the introduction to say this is an esteemed veteran from the Vietnam War and a member of the Voices for Peace.
Thank you. After the After the emotional ups and downs of the last couple of talks, it's difficult to follow with something I want to say. But I do want to say that the normalization of injustice and of violence is something that occurs and it will continue to occur in our society. And we have not thought or not mentioned yet George Floyd and what happened 5 years ago. That's part of the same package. And so we have a lot to work on here. I bring you greetings from the Eisenhower chapter. Notice the name Eisenhower chapter, 157 Veterans for Peace, and from the more than 8,000 other members of Veterans for Peace around the world, both those here in the US and our chapters in Vietnam, the United Kingdom, Japan, and Ireland. This Memorial Day weekend, Veterans for Peace calls on our members and friends to reflect on the gravity of the day, whose official purpose is to, quote, honor all those who died in service to the U.S. during peacetime and war. However, and moreover, more importantly, Veterans for Peace honors all who have died in wars, both civilians, non-combatants, children, women, the elderly, and combatants. Our hope is that a sober accounting of all the casualties of war will slow down, stop, not just mitigate the tendency to turn Memorial Day, as with Veterans Day, as has happened with Veterans Day, into a patriotic celebration of U.S. militarism. In other words, we don't want this to become a military event. We want it to be a peaceful event. We remember the words of President Eisenhower, who during World War II was the supreme commander of the Allied Expeditionary Forces in Europe. I hate war as only a soldier who has lived it can, only as one who has seen its brutality, its futility, and moreover, he said, its stupidity. And we are operating in that framework. If you pay your taxes, you're being stupid. Veterans for Peace is deeply familiar with the pain that emanates from the loss of all those lives. We have lost too many friends in wars, in foreign lands, and their aftermath at home due to suicide and service-related diseases. We have spent countless hours with Gold Star families mourning the loss of their loved ones. We also recognize that the, quote, enemy killed by our bullets and bombs had family and friends who loved them too. Their pain is no different from our own. The pain and suffering of the U.S.'s endless wars persists today, with tens of thousands dying in conflicts that are fueled by U.S.-supplied arms and intelligence, in quotes, intelligence, in quotes. Thus, the United States continues to provide bombs and political cover for the unspeakable genocide in Gaza, where estimates of civilian death range from 50,000 to over 100,000, with even a greater number of life-altering wounds for all ages and all genders and all classes. Wars will not end until there is a sea change in the thinking of the U.S. people and our political leaders. We must abandon the military doctrine of seeking full spectrum dominance in every corner of the globe, including our own. That relates back to George Floyd, of course. We must help build a peaceful world based on mutual respect for the human rights of all, as well as the rights of nature. As the Vietnam-era poster read, war is not good for children or other living things. This Memorial Day, let us honor the memory of the dead by pledging to protect our precious planet, its people, and its environment. Rather than exalting war, we must come together to abolish war once and for all. In closing, I would like to read these last lines of Archibald MacLeish's poem, Remember Us. I don't know if you're familiar with that. I heard it on the radio just recently, and I went to it and found out and read it again, and it's a very moving poem. Archibald MacLeish, Remember Us. I'm putting in parentheses here. The dead say, whether our lives and our deaths were for peace and a new hope, or for nothing we cannot say, it is you who must say this, We leave you our deaths. Give them their meaning. We were young, they say. We have died. Remember us. Thank you.
Thank you, Leadham. We're nearing the end of our program. Thank you for your patience as we've run over a bit. Another tradition of our annual Memorial Day observance is the bringing in of the voices of poets. And Y.H. Pat is a human rights activist with a JD and a PhD who has worked with people in the US, Central America, and Palestine. 20 years ago, Y.H. did civil disobedience in the West Bank, where she got struck with Palestinian troops. Y.H., please come forward. Thank you.
These poems are from Palestinians in Gaza. They were curated by Vicky Ryder, and I'm merely reading. I grant you refuge. I grant you refuge in invocation and prayer. I bless the neighborhood and the minaret to guard them from the rocket, from the moment it is the general's command until it becomes a raid. I grant you the little ones, refuge, the little ones who change the rocket's course before it lands with their smiles. I grant you the little ones, refuge, the little ones now asleep like chicks in a nest. They don't walk in their sleep towards dreams. They know death lurks outside the house. Their mother's tears are now doves, following them, trailing them, every coffin. I grant the father refuge, the little one's father, who holds the house upright when it tilts after the bombs. He implores the moment of death, have mercy, spare me a little while for their sake. I've learned to love my life. Grant them a death as beautiful as they are. I grant you refuge from hurt and death, refuge in the glory of our siege, in the belly of the whale. Our streets exalt God with every bomb. They pray for the mosques and the houses, and every time the bombing begins in the north, our supplications rise in the south. I grant you refuge from hurt and suffering. With words of sacred scripture, I shield the oranges from the sting of phosphorus, the shades of cloud from the smog. I grant you refuge in knowing that the dust will clear, and they who fell in love and died together will one day laugh. The poem I just read was by Hiba Abu Nada, a Palestinian poet, novelist, and educator. Her novel, Oxygen is Not for the Dead, won a 2017 Shaha Award for Arabic creativity. This poem was written on October 10th, 2023. It's among the last pieces that she composed. 10 days later, Hiba was killed in her home in the south of Gaza by an Israeli airstrike. She died a martyr. She was 32 years old. Another poet and writer, Noor al-Din Haj, was killed by an Israeli airstrike in his home in Al-Shuwaya on December 2nd, 2023. He was the author of the novels Wings That Do Not Fly, written in 2021, and The Gray Ones in 2022. Noor actively participated in the Cultural Passion Initiative, the Cordoba Association, and the Days of Theater Foundation. This was his final message to the outside world. This is why I'm writing now. It might be my last message that makes it out to the free world, flying with the doves of peace to tell them that we love life, or at least what life we have managed to live. In Gaza, all paths before us are blocked, and instead, we're just one tweet, breaking news story away from death. Anyway, I'll begin. My name is Noor al-Din Haj. I'm a Palestinian writer. I'm 27 years old, and I have many dreams. I'm not a number. I do not consent to my death being passing news. Say, too, that I love life, happiness, freedom, children's laughter, the sea, coffee, writing, Farouz, everything that is joyful. Though these things will all disappear in the space of a moment. One of my dreams is for my books and my writings to travel the world, for my pen to have wings so that no unstamped passport nor visa rejection can hold it back. Another dream of mine is to have a small family, to have my little son who looks like me, and to tell him a bedtime story as I rock him in my arms. The final poem I'll read is from another Gazan poet. Dubbed the giant of the Palestinian narrative coming out of Gaza, writer and educator Rifat al-Arir shared countless narratives about the horrors of the Israeli occupation and the system of apartheid, and mentored many Palestinian writers. His poem, If I Must Die, has been shared widely on social media and translated into more than 250 languages, including Spanish, Italian, Tamil, Urdu, Tagalog, Greek, Japanese, and Yiddish. On December 6, 2023, Rifat was killed by an airstrike by the Israeli military, along with his brother's son, his sister, and her 3 children. If I must die, you must live to tell my story, to sell my things, to buy a piece of cloth and some strings. Make it white with a long tail, so that a child somewhere in Gaza, while looking heaven in the eye, awaiting his dad who left in a blaze, and bid no one farewell, not even to his flesh, not even to himself, sees the kite, my kite, you made, flying above, and thinks for a moment an angel is there bringing back love. If I must die, let it bring hope. Let it be a tale.
Thank you. Kathy Markatos is here to read with you the responsive reading in your program and lead us through that. Kathy, along with her husband Jerry, have been longtime peace activists, especially working on environmental issues. She goes back, she traces her beginnings back to the Vietnam era. Kathy, please come forward.
Preemptive peace. North Carolinians speak. We come here today to claim our anger and our sorrow about every single child, parent, or soldier who has died or been harmed by war the world over, while recognizing the courage of every parent's child who has served for honor's sake. We claim a way that takes no child at all. There is another way. Nations and theologies need not be at war. Muslim, Jew, Christian, Hindu, Sikh, Buddhist, Native American, humanist, believers, and non-religious holders of sacred truths the world over know this thing. Life is precious, a gift to hold dear. The world, in its full flower of variety, is a table laid out as for a feast. And so is this vast array of magnificent differences spread before us. We reject the notion that there is only one right way of thinking, believing, or doing, or that there is only one truth that must prevail over every other. So, how then do we set the table right when words belie their meaning? When surveillance becomes security, colonialisms become democratizations, or occupation becomes liberation? Where is the wisdom of the people of the feast? Gandhi had a word for it, satyagraha, soul force. The power to see through illusion, to step out with courage, despite all odds, and to dream the result and make it so. We declare preemptive peace. We will not wait. Ready or not, we step out. We claim to something inside us all, beyond us all, uniting us all, that can and must grow until we all sit back down to eat. Your soul is no different from my soul. Your children as valued as my children. Your beliefs as worthy as mine to be lived. If you are as worthy as I am, how can I blow you away? If I am as worthy as you, how can you blow me away? Preemptive peace. Preemptive peace. It's as intentional as the national budget, as unformed as the imagination, as complex as the war machine, and as costly too. We all crave it, we need it, and we claim one another here today as travelers on the same path toward it. Preemptive peace. In thanks for our ability to see together, to mourn together, and to be together, to hope together, and to bring our traditions together, let us now proceed together. Our first step together, may you know the next. Salam, shalom, go in peace.
Thank you, Kathy. Before we end our program, on behalf of the Planning Committee, I'd like to extend our appreciation to my fellow Memorial Day Planning Committee members, Lucy Lewis, Wes Hare, Kathy and Jerry Marketos, Mary Jenne, Doug and Vicki Ryder, our presenters, Medea Benjamin, Dr. Mark Perlmutter, Leadham Lefferts, and Y.H. Pat. The Raging Grannies, of course, and Bella Nona, our videographer, Rebecca Cerise, thank you, Rebecca, and all of you who joined us today in this annual remembrance. Only 3 things more. There's an opportunity to donate, which helps us defray expenses. We would welcome your donations. And also, please check out the resources that are here at the table. And the last thing is, as we move toward the playing of taps, our Memorial Day observance concludes each year with the playing of taps, a traditional bugle call sounded to signal lights out at the end of a military day. In honor of all those who have died and suffered in war, our trumpeter, Chris Meglin, will send us on with the playing of taps. Chris teaches English literature at Riverside High School in Durham and has been our tap soloist for the past several years. Chris, thank you.
Bye.